It's fucking cool. It looks cool. It's designed cool. You know, it's got this fucking cool thing. You know, like, it is a cool shoe. So the Atreyu Base Trail really makes me wonder, how pared down can you really get a trail runner? So just a quick note before we get into it, I am an REI employee and these shoes were provided for review, but the opinions I'm gonna be expressing are all based on my experience in the shoes. So the Base Trail is coming in at 10 ounces per shoe. There's 6 millimeters of offset or drop. You have 30 millimeters of stack height in the heel and about 24 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot. The Base Trail from Atreyu is a really interesting experiment in designing trail running footwear that really is just what you need. And so, you know, I was really curious to put it on, partially because I love the Daily Trainer so much, and I love that really like simple pared down design. So if we take a look at the shoe from top to bottom, I think the thing that strikes most people here, I know it struck me first, is the upper, right? For me, it does make me want to pick it up and try to look through it all the time. It's kind of cool because like you can see through it a little bit, but when you get really close, you notice that it's a little bit cloudy, which is probably a good thing, right? Like putting my hand in there, you can see it pretty well. So it is pretty breathable, it is pretty thin, but you can even see with that grid pattern there, it's got that like ripstop quality to it. So it's the least stretchy upper that I felt in a while. It is just kind of there. You'll notice that like there is some microfiber just like in the toe box there. That's what these black pieces are actually on the inside, kind of like this underlay system. And that just kind of feels a little bit more comfortable, but it also can kind of like give you some fit points there, some points of reference for your foot, which is kind of nice. Really cool Atreyu logos, love that. So just like the Atreyu thing all the way through. Come to the back, you'll notice that you have this part in black a little bit more, and that's because on the inside you have a little bit more of that cushioning there, and you can kind of pair that with a little bit of the cushioned insole. Getting to the tongue, you'll notice that the tongue, it does feel pretty traditional. It just feels like almost like a suede tongue that most footwear has, most traditional footwear has. Cool thing about Atreyu footwear is that it's unisex, so you can see right here in the tongue that it's actually for a men's 9 or a woman's 10.5. And then the laces are pretty basic. What I like about the laces though, again, is that they're long enough to customize the fit. You'll notice that the underlays on the upper also go through the lace eyelets too, to just reinforce that piece too, which is usually pretty important in trail running footwear. If we get down to the midsole, we'll notice that, again, you got that 6 mil drop kind of called out. This is made with what's called supercritical EVA, which is the proprietary foam there. Essentially, it's got a little bit of carbon dioxide in there, giving you a little bit of response. It's actually the same midsole that's in the Daily Trainer, but it's gonna give you a little bit of that bounce, a little bit of that response. On either end of the spectrum, it's probably like squarely in the middle. Moving out to the outsole, that's where you got this really distinctive, you know, insect pattern there. You're hopefully using this on dirt trails or mixed terrain there, and you'll leave your mark for sure. If you're running in the daylight, you probably can't get lost, just follow your footsteps back. You should be able to see that there. The lugs on this shoe aren't super aggressive. You'll notice that there's a slight difference. So going from the insect out, essentially, you got a little bit of these more aggressive kind of like pattern shaped, and they look a little bit more like arrows, moving into more like circular or octagon kind of shaped lugs. And the same thing on the back end, except they're in reverse order, which helps you with that braking. So I've put 45 miles on the Base Trail, and I've been able to take them in a couple different conditions. Some of my favorite trail systems for sure that I test most of my trail running footwear on. You know, with more rounded shaped lugs, I'm never like, oh yeah, that feels really like it's gonna, you know, stick to everything I'm going for, going over, or going around. But I did see that it's got a little bit more aggressive lugs, you know, closer to the mid part of the shoe, and it's got it reversed a little bit going in the heel, so I could brake if I wanted to. I took it out on some stuff that's a little bit more moderate, you know, gained some elevation, certainly bombed down some hills, which was kind of nice, running down switchbacks, which is always my favorite thing. And then I took it on some stuff that was a little bit more technical, local trails, but like scrambling over rocks a little bit more, some of the stuff where I wasn't running, you know, had to kind of pull myself up over rocks and things like that. And then especially on the downhill, like jumping over things that were a little bit more obtrusive, getting into some stuff that was perhaps a little bit muddier, a little bit wetter. I never felt like, oh man, I'm gonna slip in this shoe. It felt like I did get some solid purchase in it and some solid traction. Maybe it was a mental thing, but I never tried to get like super off trail with it, you know? If I was scrambling or doing some stuff, I slowed down a little bit more. I made sure my foot was secure. And you know, after, again, only about 45 miles or so, the fact that like the front part of the lugs are wearing down already, I just think like that's probably the right decision. Like the outsole pattern for this seems like, you know, is it hard packed? Are you going to be on stuff that's single track? Are you going to be having a good time, but probably not going to be like bushwhacking, probably not going to be off trail, probably not going to be doing a lot of climbing in it. So for me, I thought this shoe did really well and in a way that I thought it would excel in, and I had a ton of fun in it. When I first put on the shoe, I was thinking about like, all right, what does the fit look like, especially since like this upper really doesn't stretch. But I was able to fit in the shoe, and I was honestly surprised by those underlays. I was like, oh, that feels kind of nice, you know? So it just feels like it does hit my foot in a very specific way, even in ways where the volume of my foot doesn't fit the volume of the footwear, and I might have a little bit more room. The way the tongue feels underneath and the way the microfiber kind of hits my foot in my sock still feels like it gives me enough security right there. Again, the back part of the shoe and the heel portion especially, essentially almost has no heel counter. It's really relying on like the type of mesh that it has in there and then the reinforcement of the cushion. But I kind of like that because I'm not trying to go as fast as I can. I'm honestly trying to go longer than faster. And in that case, like I'm doing a lot of this, I'm like just feeling comfortable, feeling pretty slow and enjoying what's around me. And so I'm not wanting like a ton of weight on the back part of my foot. And this kind of gives me that comfortable feeling that I like for that part of the footwear. So overall, it felt pretty good. It feels a little bit more secure and a little bit less forgiving than the Atreyu Daily Trainer. But that's probably what you want in trail running shoes. You probably want a little bit more structure there. And when I say a little bit more, I really mean just a little bit more. Like there's really not a lot of structure. It's like some microfiber, that's the structure. So it's really not a lot, which keeps me comfortable. It keeps me feeling like I can run free and keeps me feeling like I can run as long as I want. So I moved about 2 years ago, and the new place that I moved to was about 2 miles away from this spectacular park. I fell in love with the park right away, and pretty soon I realized that I can run out my door for about 2 miles, get to the park, run for 4 miles on unpaved surfaces, and then run back another 2 miles. And the first thing I thought of was like, man, I wish I had a transition shoe. I wish I had a shoe that felt good on paved surfaces and equally as good on unpaved surfaces, and then got me back home feeling comfortable the whole way. And so I thought like, yeah, when should I get a transition shoe? But I couldn't justify it. I was like, well, I could just wear road shoes. Maybe I could just drive there and wear trail shoes. And so I think there was that desire kind of lingered always in my mind. And you know, when I got on the Base Trail, they were clearly positioned as a trail running shoe, and they are, but I, again, turned it around and I looked at what it was on the upper, the midsole, and the outsole, and I felt like this could do what I wanted it to do in that respect, right? Like the lugs weren't deep enough to feel uncomfortable on the paved surfaces, but they still inspired confidence on wet, you know, maybe rooty, rocky terrain, especially from a local park perspective. And what I really loved paired with that is that, like, you know, it kind of has this midsole, again, of a daily trainer. So this is a run that I do pretty regularly, and it just feels like it can be consistent in that way. Pair that with like a pretty light but protective upper, like now I had a shoe that was like, wow, this is the shoe for this very specific run that I really enjoy. You know, usually when I think of trail running, I think of images and trails, and I remember trails and experiences that perhaps belong in my mind in a categorization under a different type of shoe, maybe something that's more aggressively lugged, maybe something that has a little bit more structure. And when I looked at this shoe, what I thought about, like, wow, this could be honestly my workhorse shoe if I use it as a transition shoe in that way, if I use it as a shoe that can kind of be on some lighter trails, if I'm honest with myself and think about like, okay, where's most of my trail running mileage coming from? And where can I stand to put a little bit more miles or time in? And that's usually the trails that are closest to me. And those trails are well suited for running with a shoe like this. The Base Trail really seems like it would be a great option for folks that are looking to get just a pared down shoe that could be confidence inspiring on the dirt, right? For folks that are really entering the trail running space and are going to their local park trails, maybe the trails are gravel trails, maybe folks that are looking for a trail runner as a hiker. I mean, I honestly get really excited when I think about hiking in this shoe because it's super lightweight, it's still protective, I can see my socks through there, it always makes me excited about it, and it still gives me a lot of confidence-inspiring traction on the bottom. So I think this shoe excels in a lot of those ways, and I think lots of folks would be really excited to see that. It's worth mentioning that because this is a unisex shoe, if you're somebody that's used to wearing women's trail runners specifically, this comes in a little bit wider of a width, it comes in a D width. So if that fit is a consideration for you, then it might be a really awesome shoe for you to try on. So that's my review of the Base Trail model from Atreyu. But I'd love to hear from y'all. What do you think about when you hear stripped down trail running shoe? If you had the opportunity to design a trail running shoe in a completely different way, what would yours look like? Leave a comment below. I'd love to read them. The shoe looks cooler than you will. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense? Like, sometimes when I think about trail running, I think about how cool I look, and I'm like, oh, this is f***ing rad, you know, and you're jumping over cool shit. So, yeah.